So one of the things that you just brought up, which I think is a fantastic segue, is that there are organizations that are in the climate movement that, let's just say, they're not everything that they're cooped up to.
Sierra Club.
So we have a couple of them. I would say the two most in particular that I took exception with is definitely the Sierra Club and the League of Conservation Voters. And these are two organizations that not only didn't support Jen, but I also understand in politics, you generally don't get involved with certain races if you simply don't believe that a candidate is viable, even if you believe what they're fighting for, because the difference between one who is taking the fossil fuel money and isn't it should pretty much be the deciding factor. But these two organizations decided to back Wasserman Schultz, who has a horrifically bad record when it comes to the environment, so much so that she voted to fast track the TPP. And anybody who knows what that would do environmentally would be disastrous. So can you speak to knowing how to sort of navigate this field of which climate organizations are truly fighting for the cause? Because there are a couple of great ones down here in Florida. As you said, you have family who lives in this area.
Yeah.
Bull Sugar is a phenomenal organization that's up in sort of like the central region of the state, right around Port St. Lucie and Fort Pearson, that region. And then we also have the Florida Environmental Caucus, which—
And we have a Sunrise Movement.
And we have the Sunrise Movement. Now, the National Sunrise Movement did not endorse Jen, but the Miami chapter, which is one of the biggest in the country, did endorse her. So there are some really good groups that are out there, but there are also some pretenders. And I think it's important, and would love for you to speak on this. How do you tell the difference between ones that are absolutely for the cause and ones that are, let's just say, playing the political game, if you will?
Yeah, it's difficult. There's no question. And, Sierra Club is an interesting one in particular because historically they were perhaps the most conservative of the environmental organizations. And, it was about saving the Sierra. So they had a pretty narrow mission. It was, and I will give some credit to Michael Brune. Under his leadership, they've moved in the right direction. There's only so much that one, president can do with an environmental organization, because there's a legacy. There's a legacy of who are the members historically, where do they get the support from. So I would want to say that I'll confess sort of conflict of interest here. I'm personal friends with Michael Brune, and I do think that he's done a good job in getting them more involved on issues like climate change. So there's been a lot of movement. Does that mean they're entirely where we might want them to be? No. And in my book, I actually take issue with an article in Sierra Magazine that I felt played into one of the frames that I've been arguing is unhelpful. This idea that the solution to the problem is almost exclusively individual behavioral change. It puts it on us rather than the polluters. And of course, there's only so much we can do as individuals. We have to work within the system that's there. And if that system has the wrong incentives, then we're sort of stuck. If we can't get renewable energy because our providers don't give us that option, we're sort of stuck. And so, there, in that case, the Sierra Club had written an article which sort of played into that that idea that it's really about individual behavior and not so much about policy change. And I took issue with that. And I mentioned in my book, I take them to task on that. On the other hand, I do, I do sort of thank Michael Brune for trying to move them in the right direction. So, it's sort of, I hate to quote, the last person you want to quote, is Donald Rumsfeld, but I find I find myself, he has some good quotes, and sort of you go to war with the army you have, not the one you might like to. In this case, we have some very powerful opponents, the fossil fuel industry. and we need all of the allies that we can get. So there does have to be some degree of compromise in forming this alliance, and it's always going to be a little uncomfortable, and we're going to have to work with organizations with which we don't agree 100% of them, but hopefully maybe we agree with them more than 50% of the time. And with the polluters and those promoting their agenda, we agree with them 0% of the time. So I see where you're coming from. I really do. And it just comes down to some of the difficult rules of realpolitik, I guess. And where I come down is we don't have time. We have to act now. We've got to bring carbon emissions down by a factor of 2 within the next 10 years. So what we need to do is to get the action we can now while working to change the system for the better. And, you know, people ask me often, you know, what I think about capitalism. Can a resource-driven capitalist system be consistent with environmental sustainability? And I'm not convinced it can be. So I do think we ultimately need to move away from that system, but I don't think we're going to be successful in doing that within a few years, and we need to tackle this problem within a few years. So that's sort of where I come down.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.